Okay, and we are live. Thank you everyone for joining us today for workshop number 3 for the Boundless Hackathon at Stanford. This workshop will be a roundtable discussion where we cover numerous topics. I mentioned this earlier, but I just want to reiterate, we really appreciate everyone from taking the time to join us tonight to hear a little bit more from some of our hosts, along with more information about the hackathon itself. For anyone who's not aware, Boundless Hack at Stanford is a hackathon sponsored by Stanford Blockchain Accelerator, Nautilus Chain, ZkSync, Roots Labs, among others, on the DoraHacks platform right now. There are 9 days left for the hackathon. There's already over 50 final submissions, and there's still $300,000 USD up for grabs across different topics and qualifications for builds such as DeFi, NFT, GameFi infra, and other tracks as well. So I highly recommend anyone who hasn't submitted a project yet that's interested to please apply. You'll be receiving a lot of community and ecosystem along with incubational support as well. So with that being said, I'd love to once again reintroduce the topic of tonight's workshop, which is broadly the Web3 wave and blockchain infrastructure evolutions have long-term implications for DeFi development. And tonight's workshop will be a roundtable discussing this. To that point, I'd love to introduce some of the panel participants that will be joining me up on the stage tonight. The first is Yan Yan of Blockchain Academy. She's the co-founder and CMO of Blockchain Academy and Talentry. Alongside her will be Andy, the CEO of Talentry. And then finally, of course, Omar, who is the head of business development at ZkSync. So thank you all for joining tonight. Before we get started, are there any initial words that any of the three of you would like to say? Okay, we'll dive right in. So as I said, the topic of the workshop is, or I should say the roundtable, is the Web3 wave and blockchain infrastructure evolution have long-term implications for DeFi development. So based off that, the first question I'd like to pose to all of you tonight is this. Will customized DeFi solutions emerge? What adjustments do you think are needed to move in this direction? Andy, maybe we'll start with you.
Cool. So yeah, for me, actually, I've been in the DeFi space for pretty long time, and I believe that as for the emergence of customized DeFi solution, it's not just possibility; it's inevitable. So we see blockchains are trying to make revolutions like in terms of speed, in terms of their adaptivity, and also in terms of let's say different roll-ups. Many different technologies are trying to grow. So basically, right now people are seeing more and more thriving of DeFi solutions and also making customized. And we're already seeing a variety of DeFi protocols catering to various needs. Like the OG ones, Curve, Uniswap, and also the new ones. There's a lot like GMX doing great, and also we see other perpetuals, we see other structured products, and it's such as borrow and lending, derivatives, insurance, asset management. And I think it will be a more and more mainstream for sure. Yeah.
Anyone else want to jump in? Otherwise, I'll ask Andy a couple follow-up questions. Sure. So Andy, I think that's a pretty good point. I am curious your thoughts on, in terms of customized DeFi solutions, if you see these being built mostly, on Ethereum, or if you think that things like application-specific chains or layer 3s will be utilized more for customized DeFi solutions.
Yeah, I think definitely we see a lot of innovations on Ethereum, that's for sure. So basically, because Ethereum have the biggest ecosystem, a lot of community there, and also it's standing here for a pretty long time. So basically, we see a lot of projects when they launch, they wanted to launch on Ethereum. But also layer threes are, very crucial, I think, because right now more and more blockchains like layer threes, they're pretty fast speed and also scalable. That creates space for more people. To create applications on there, and also I think right now crush chains are more and more easy to do it. For example, previously, if let's do it in 2020, we want to do crush chains from one chain to another. That's pretty hard. So basically, there are hacks, and also it takes a long time. But right now, it's pretty flexible. So which means which chain you're building is not that important, but you're choosing one that's fast and also scalable, and you want to build that where community can use that service. Yeah,
I think that makes sense. And I think in the future, there'll be more ecosystem abstraction as well for application developers within a more broad ecosystem like Ethereum, for example, which obviously includes many different rollups and ZK solutions. But for now, I would say that like the Arbitrum ecosystem is still very much different from the ecosystem occurring on Ethereum mainnet. So with that being said, like, do you think that if you, for example, are a very, very powerful Solidity developer, you have a great idea for a protocol, and you really want to bring it to market, do you think that at this point in time, you'll see developers like start off on application specific chains like a layer 3 for customized DeFi solutions? Or do you think it's more of they'll launch still on Ethereum maybe at first, because Ethereum has the most users, and then maybe once they found PMF or gain some adoption and need to further customize their infrastructure to become more scalable, they'll move to a layer 3 or move to an app chain, kind of like how we saw DYDX do? Or do you think there is a world where even short term, very good applications will be able to launch directly on an application specific chain and still get some attention and mind share of users?
Yeah, actually, I think so. If you see DYDX, it's because of the application. That's why people use it. So I think in the future, more and more users, they'll be caring about the application more. So that's what we call killer apps. Killer apps, they bring users, and some users, they even don't care which chain or which infrastructure the killer app is using. So that's why I think the app matters the most. So basically, let's say, definitely GMX right now is in Arbitrum and also Avalanche, but I think even GMX go to other ecosystem is still that powerful. So basically, building a killer app is the most critical thing for any user or any, let's say, builder, and then it's choosing the ecosystem. I think that will be mattering not that most in the future.
Yeah, so it's like you build it and they will come as long as it's a killer app.
Exactly, because also I want to mention for real the action of SEC, right? Suing a lot of different entities, Binance, Coinbase. So it's also actually, I think, it's not a bad thing because it's helping the growth of DeFi, because people are actually thinking like, some of them think central exchange is best previously, but now they will feel like they need to use some decentralized infrastructure. And also, more and more people, they are trusting, DeFi money rather than centralized banks. I think that's also pretty good for the prosperous of DeFi.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's a pretty clear answer. Thank you for walking me through some of that. I do want to pivot now to the second question of the night, which is how does compliance shape the future of DeFi, and what efforts do you think are required for progress in this direction? Yan, why don't we go to you to take a first crack at this question?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. There's certainly a lot of concerns, lately about compliance, like Andy just mentioned, especially what SEC or different governments is taking their steps towards the Web3 space, especially recently. Andy mentioned, we know the ban on staking let Coinbase and Kraken lose their market caps earlier this year, and the lawsuit of Binance has causing a lot of frustration lately in the market. So I think definitely is really interested to talk about this question today specifically, because a lot of us right now are all under sort of like the horror of SEC right now. But I like to say, before I really jump in, like one thing we must keep in mind, we all know that when it comes to compliance, right, it's issued by the government or regulators, and usually it's taking longer progress, compared to how the market is moving. And if they are taking steps, it usually means that these areas has waited enough for them to really take actions and paying attention. So with that said, I like to emphasize that even though Web3 is it's still a very small pie, and DeFi compared to traditional finance, it's still a tiny little piece, but we're growing fast, and we're definitely heading to the right direction, as some of these are calling the attention of governments lately. And compliance is certainly crucial in my perspective, for DeFi. While DeFi space usually, have the characteristic of decentralization, self-custody, but I think it's with more issues in the space, I think it has becoming more clear that certain degree of regulation, and it will be necessary for DeFi, especially to gain the mainstream acceptance. So this is particularly true as governments and regulators all around the world right now is beginning to pay more attention in this area after they figure out the sex issue. And I'm not defending the regulators right now because, in my perspective, I think we all need to pay attention, and we all need to protect our own on-chain privacy. But it is really all about the importance of balance.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty interesting perspective. As a follow-up, I'd like to kind of ask you how you think like new privacy DeFi solutions should be viewing compliance, because obviously everyone in an ideal world wants their projects to be compliant, right? But in that same breath, if you're building a privacy solution that's compliant, that probably means that in the situation where there is a nefarious actor or there's some shady stuff going on with this privacy solution, and they're subpoenaed by the government, or they want to work with the government to decrypt transactions that might be nefarious. That way they remain compliant. That might basically like ruin the privacy value add, right, to the users of that chain that are doing it for the purpose of being private. So how do you think you kind of carve that pig, so to speak, in terms of like wanting to be compliant, but also wanting to make sure that you're true to the privacy solution for like DeFi users that are looking for that?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I think as we're speaking perhaps to a lot of the founders today, or anyone who wants to build a new project, right? My first point is that there are so much uncertainty when it comes to this particular topic. When it comes to the government, we never really know, like for sure, okay, this is like certainly like the next steps that they're gonna ruin XYZ project, right? There's not 100% that anyone in the space at this point can say, okay, I am 100% sure that I can take this balance. I can make sure all my staffs and everything is taken care of. No, but one thing that we always talk about in the industry, and I particularly have a lot of talks to the early founders or some of the talents, students within our community, is that if you want to launch a project, right, no matter it's DeFi or anything, make sure to always do check with the lawyer at the beginning. And this is something like even like within our, like our own team, like we have lawyers actually like in our team. And this is not just like, okay, I'm going to launch this project. Let me check with the lawyer, make sure I file everything, and done. It's not like a one thing set and done kind of a thing, but it's actually something like going on that you have to make sure that you're keeping on track of. So that's certainly, one. And my second point is that as the whole industry, right, there are a couple of things that we all can make progress on. as a team, as an industry, it requires development of technology. There's more research needs to be done into privacy preserving technology like ZK proofs that can incorporate into the DeFi platform. And I'm very interested also into the lately work on using OR verification. Even though there's a lot of talks about how you scan the iris, but you cannot really define this is the person. But it's kind of like a fingerprint thing, right? Like eventually there will be a system and there will be data to be stored to solve some of these things that bring into certain, maybe I think for KYCs. The next thing for me, I'm always passionate about education, right? That's how, like us as a team, we're doing blockchain education. I think for both the users and regulators actually need to have better understanding the benefit, the risks of DeFi and how it can be used responsibly. This would lead to a much safer and more efficient use of DeFi as a long run. And educating policymakers can help them actually make informed decisions, that lead to the benefits of the major public, to foster a better environment where DeFi can actually thrive and then can still be safe and fair. So this is actually exactly what we're exploring in Blockchain Academy through certain things like supporting this hackathon as a partner or other of our events, education programs, contents, and more.
Got it. Yeah, it makes sense. Would you say that there's any like compliance focused projects or trends that excite you the most short term?
I don't have it on the top of my mind, but I would definitely would love to research and share a little bit more. I think this is a really good topic to actually share within the community and to the community with this hackathon, and we'll definitely send it over to you guys.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I guess in that same note, I think it's an interesting question for Andy as well. If I can go back to you for a second, man, which is just, I know you mentioned GMX and some other structured product solutions out there, but what do you envision like future customized DeFi solutions will look like? Like, is it just going to be more derivatives of different structured products? Like, which ones do you think in the future will have some of the best product market fit for both, like I would say, like DeFi power users, but also for people that are just looking to maybe move some of their investments on chain in the future?
Yeah, actually, I had a couple of conversation with some of my investors. So one investor from Finbush Capital, he when we chat, I asked him like, do you think there'll be a super app? It's also decentralized, having a lot of different things in it. Like, you have entrance phase, you have a swap, you have a derivative, are all things combined into one. He said it can be a way, but he believed like DeFi is decentralized, so it's pro innovation. Anyone who wanted to innovate can put things in. So you see, from the time of Uniswap to 3.3 Olympus DAO, you see V3.3 by on Phantom solidly, and then you see different other innovations like DeFi and something. Still thriving like GMX and other protocols. So what I believe is like there would not be an ending phase. So there would not be a phase like we're totally mature. So this space will be, keep transforming, and every protocol will be keep coming out. You'll see different new things every day, either tokenomics change or protocol design change. I think that's the best of DeFi because we see everything. Everyone can build everything.
Got it. Yeah, thank you for that added color. I guess at this point, there's another question that I'd love to ask. Maybe we can turn to Omar. Finally, he's been waiting patiently, and I'm sure he's eager to share some of his thoughts. Omar, I'd love to ask you, will DeFi's form change with the evolution of blockchain infrastructure overall? And I know Andy kind of touched on this a bit, but maybe you can go even more in depth, specifically since you're with ZkSync, is how does the emergence of layer 3 impact DeFi development?
Sure. So even before layer 3, there's still a lot of inefficiencies in just the infrastructure as it currently exists, right? So for example, oracles are still insanely slow, which means your price updates are not really that great. And that's kind of one of the reasons why you see the same types of DeFi products constantly just being regurgitated over and over again, right? What we kind of like, just even on the layer 2s, what you kind of need is very fast and cheap oracles. And so that hopefully comes about in the coming months, right? We need 1 second updates. We need faster than 1 second updates of oracles, because if you don't have that, you can't really do higher frequency trading, right? The fastest thing you can do right now is like a swap, or you do a GMX trade. That's very slow. If you really want to pick it up and add more liquidity, you actually need to start thinking of, okay, how do we actually bring in like order books, right? And so one infrastructure piece right now is just the oracles itself. How do I get quicker and faster price updates for significantly cheap? That's one piece. Then there is also just the privacy aspect. You can't really have much of institutional capital coming in if everything is completely visible on chain. And so with various different privacy protocols that are coming out with zero knowledge proofs, ideally, hopefully that kind of helps it a little bit. If you go, right, and so hopefully that also then brings in some more innovation. Then you can actually start thinking of, okay, now let's go on to the layer 3 side. And what does layer 3 do? Well, so on ZkSync, we've got essentially hyperchains that are coming out. And the idea is you kind of have a pick between essentially just a roll up. So you can just do the same thing as a layer 2, but it's just a layer 3 now. And so you can, it's kind of like a layer, like just like a ZK rollup app chain. Or you can do something on the other end, which is like a Validium chain, right? Where essentially no data is actually posted to the chain below. And so here now are some interesting design choices. You can either have your data essentially be stored in some sort of centralized database by the operator, or you could have another data availability layer. And so the Validium essentially has its own kind of acts kind of like owns its own blockchain, but doesn't post any data. All it does is just post the validity proof that a transaction happened. So that opens up quite a lot more from a design space, because now you can start really thinking of, okay, I can just full on build, an order book DEX, or DYDX is probably the first one that's actually tried to do this, and have done this pretty well. But I think once you start getting to layer 3s, you have significantly cheaper transactions, you have faster transactions, and then you also have a lot more options in terms of privacy as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of on that same note of like DeFi on layer 3s and maintaining speed and decentralization, is there anything you'd like to add about like the emergence of shared sequencer networks and maybe how you envision that helping speed up DeFi and keep it decentralized on any layer 3s?
I think the verdict's still kind of out on shared sequencers, honestly. We ourselves are still exploring it. I'm not fully certain. I mean, I can see potentially some scenarios in the layer 3 world where you might use a shared sequencer, but I wouldn't know enough. I mean, we're still kind of researching it a little bit, whether it makes sense in certain designs or not. I think it might, maybe it might make sense if you kind of have a network of layer 3s. So for example, maybe you're a single exchange, but you're running different types of products in different hyperchains. In that case, you maybe do a shared sequencer, because then someone could say, okay, I've got collateral, I've got my asset in hyperchain A, I want to use that as collateral in hyperchain B, or you kind of need some sort of proper ordering between those hyperchains, and that's maybe where shared sequencer comes into play. But we're still kind of exploring the implications of a shared sequencer at the moment.
That's fair. Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot there. I was just curious what you thought. And then in terms of like layer 3s in general, like how do you at ZkSync, like what's your strategy in terms of having like a layer 3 integration or a layer 3 product or really anything that plugs in on top of ZkSync. Anything you can share about how you're thinking about this generally as someone who's looking to grow just the ZkSync ecosystem overall?
Yeah, I mean, I would say long term, this is the response to all the private blockchains, because if you are going after all of finance, you have to go after essentially central banks and the banking infrastructure. And so for that, you definitely need layer threes and hyperchains. Like there's no other solution there. Right now, most of them generally use things like Hyperledger, right, or R3 Corda. They use them because they're essentially are what would be our own app chains, right? They're fully permissioned, they're fully private, and you can customize them how you want. And so the hyperchains long term are more or less kind of give you the best of both worlds. They're objectively neutral because they're built on Ethereum. You use zero knowledge proofs to essentially ensure complete neutrality and security. It would be decentralized in that aspect as well because everything settles on Ethereum there. But then it also has the aspect of, if you want, you can make it fully permissioned and private and customize how you want. And so then it has the same properties as the private blockchain networks. So that's one aspect of it. The other one is, if you move beyond, like, so there's building, app specific DeFi protocols. So they can, build however they want. They can design their smart contracts how they want. They can design their user experience how they want, and they can kind of contain it in that way. They can kind of almost make it permissioned as well, especially if they want to go after institutional capital to make sure that everyone's kind of KYC'd, etc. Then there's other aspects like, different metaverses or gaming specific app chains.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. How do you see, like, in the absence of shared sequencers, and without like kind of getting too in the weeds there, have you thought at all about maintaining like a level of censorship resistance even on like a permissioned layer 3? Obviously, you just mentioned it's credibly neutral because everything settles on Ethereum. It's decentralized in that manner. But just on the transaction front, have you thought at all about how to ensure this, or do you think it's even important for a very hyper specific layer 3 solution?
Well, I think one of the reasons people might build, or like institutions might actually build on a layer 3, is because of the ability to censor sanction transactions, right? Or the ability to essentially make it permissioned. I would think a permissioned network is kind of almost the same thing as a censored, as a network that doesn't have censorship resistance, right? When we talk about censorship resistance, where is it actually applicable, right? Obviously, it's very applicable in being censorship resistant at the layer 2 because that's completely public and permissionless. It's very applicable on the layer 1 on Ethereum because that's completely permissionless and decentralized as well. But once you get to the app chain, I think some people are going to build their app chains the way they want to, and some of those are going to be censored.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I know I just want to give you an opportunity because I'm sure we've seen it all in our either Twitter feed or news lately. And you don't have to, but if there's anything you would like to share in terms of recent updates related to ZkSync era and like what your plans are there, love to give you the opportunity to do that as well.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, we don't have to talk about era. I mean, I'm not really here to pitch. But yeah, I mean, I think we've launched, like, it's been about 3 months now, maybe less than 3 months. Fastest growing L2 that's ever existed. I think we've now passed over 2 million accounts, etc. I think all the stats are very good. But what we're going to start seeing now is the growth of a lot of interesting and new projects. For example, on the DeFi front, we have Maverick Protocol, which is doing, I think, most of the volume in LSDeFi on Ethereum. And hopefully they can do the same on ZkSync. We've got a number of liquid staking derivatives now coming on board. We've got CV ETH, we've got Rocket Pool ETH, and eventually we'll have the other ones as well coming too. So it's going to start becoming very interesting from a DeFi perspective. I think Uniswap is right around the horizon. You've got essentially Curve, Aave, all those guys, pretty much everything. Every single DeFi OG project on Ethereum will be on ZkSync, at some point by this summer, right? Probably sometime by July. And then from there, it'll be interesting to see, okay, what are the next DeFi narratives? I think DeFi is probably coming up. That'll be pretty interesting. So I think the DeFi narrative overall, the DeFi ecosystem that's growing on ZkSync, it's going to start taking form and shape. And it'll be very, we're really looking forward to that. The one interesting part though is when I was saying oracles on ZkSync, we only post the state difference to Ethereum. And so what that means is if you're an oracle, you can post 100 oracle price updates within the same block, and you would only have to pay once for the call data or updating your storage slot. And so we think that is going to bring out a lot of efficiencies for oracles, which then also implies then the perps. So like GMX, etc., they gain a lot of efficiency as well on ZkSync, and that's going to be it's a very unique feature for us.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing. At this point, I'd love to go around the room one more time, because obviously Yan and Andy, you're heavily involved in this hackathon on ecosystem support, and Omar, you're involved as a judge. So maybe starting with Yan, I'd love to hear like if you want to share, kind of like how you're planning on supporting builders in this hackathon, and what type of ecosystem support you'd like to offer from Blockchain Academy.
Yeah. So first of all, when we hear about this event, immediately I was like, yes, we're in. This particular event, is exactly tied into what we do in Blockchain Academy. What we aim for is to nurturing and developing the next generation of Web3 talent. So a lot of things involving educating users, even like from the Web2 space, tapping into Web3, and developer-focused communities to enhance different aspects of the education. So at any time, if you guys feel like there are certain programs or education series that you guys want to see from Blockchain Academy, feel free to reach out to us. We're usually very responsive when it comes to DMs on Twitter. So I've always loved to hear from the community what they want to see. And we're always rolling out different education programs, different hackathons all around the world. Whether you're based in the US or China or Hong Kong, we have certain communities there. Or if you want to build projects with, different founders or talents, always I would encourage you guys to be part of our community, because building a project, especially in the Web3 space, you certainly want the right team members. You certainly want to get involved in the community itself, and we have a really active community to support as well. And I think Andy can tap into a little bit, how what we're doing, particularly in Talentry as well, on helping developers and talents in Web3.
Thank you. Yeah, Andy, please feel free to share.
Yeah, thanks, Ian, and thanks, Brian. Actually, I think right now there's a trend that we don't want to see, which is like there's a lot of OGs and also crypto investors that they form a small group and they invest in typical projects done by several teams. So if things keep continuing like that, that creates a problem, because people, they have talents, but they don't have connections. They cannot create innovations. For example, let's say right now we see AI tools and also a lot of building tools are very popular and also very easy to use. Even a college student, when he graduates or before he graduates, if he has something he have in mind, he can do, and he can try out a demo or even build a project himself. But right now is that he don't have these connections with VCs, and also when he wanted to show something, no one trusts him or no one wanted to listen. That's a problem, I think. So that's what we wanted to create on Talentry, because we believe right now there's a bunch of talents flowing around the world that they have talent mind, and also they have their ideas, but they need more opportunities. So we wanted to create a fair platform so people can show, and also people can, trying to communicate with each other. And more importantly, they can do a demo on their own. So basically, using these AI tools, using these building tools, they can build some crypto projects themselves, and other people can offer them something directly on the platform, which is very fairly and also very transparent. That's what we believe will be the future for DeFi and also for the crypto world, for the Web3 world, because with these innovations, that's where we thrive. Yeah. So I think we really wanted to power the next innovation of especially talent, because these are the most important assets we wanted to invest in the future world.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds super interesting. And I'm very happy you're a part of this hackathon to share that. Andy, or Omar, I should say, as a judge, as a judge for this hackathon, I think it would be great to kind of wrap up this workshop with maybe your perspective of what is going to attract your attention the most, and what type of projects you're excited to see for this hackathon, and maybe a bit about your mentality when it comes to judging projects as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting projects in here. So I'm waiting to be surprised by some of the ideas some people have. I would say, the biggest problems, obviously, when I look at projects is, are you solving the UX problems? Are you building applications that are targeting towards individuals, or like, how do we actually take blockchain applications mainstream, right? So very interested in seeing interesting applications like account abstraction potentially, right? How does my mom start using blockchain? That's going to be one way. Very interested in seeing new, more capital efficient ways in DeFi, various different types of liquidity pools, different types of functions. That'll be very interesting. Very interested in seeing different types of middleware that essentially makes development a lot easier. And so kind of the sky's the limit on that one. But I'm sure I'll be very surprised and very impressed by some of the ideas and some of the ingenuity and the innovative things that will come out of the teams here.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. That's basically our full agenda for this roundtable tonight. It wasn't too many questions, but they were important questions, and all of our panelists gave really thorough responses. I'll go ahead and wrap up the roundtable in just a few moments here, and there's no pressure, but if any of the three panelists, Yanni and Andy or Omar, if you have anything else you'd like to say before we close up, now's your time. Otherwise, we can go ahead and finish up, but I just want to give you the opportunity in case there's anything.
Just want to say something for the hackathon participants. You guys are the stars and the future, or the stars of this whole event, the center of the whole event, and the future of the industry, and go and thrive. And yeah, best luck for this hackathon for everyone.
Excellent. Thanks, Yan. So if that's all, I'd love to thank our audience for attending and listening as well. If you didn't get a chance, or if you have some questions that you haven't asked yet, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My Telegram's @BrianDora. I'll answer any of your questions. I'm sure Yanni and Andy or Omar would be happy to answer your questions as well. You can connect with us on socials, DoraHacks, Blockchain Academy, Telentry, and of course, Omar is at ZkSync. So please feel free to connect with them on socials and find out how you can get involved in each of their ecosystems if you're interested. They'll be here, providing incubational support and additional resources to all of the hackathon participants until the closing ceremony. And just as a brief wrap up of our discussion, we heard from Yan about compliance and DeFi solutions in that field going forward. Andy shared some information about customized DeFi solutions in the future. And of course, Omar discussed some of how DeFi will change over time as blockchain infrastructure evolves and the impact of layer 3s on DeFi development. So with that being said, I'd love to thank all of you for providing your expert opinions on these topics tonight, and our audience for attending and listening. And that's it. Thank you for attending workshop number 3 of Boundless Hackathon at Stanford. There's still a couple days left in the hackathon, so very excited for it to wrap up and see all of the very promising projects. It's been a great experience and a great event thus far. We're very excited to be able to host it and look forward to providing more support in the future. So thank you all very much. And that concludes the workshop.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.